Yeah, it's great energy. All right, Susan Michelle, this mic is all yours, my friend.
Hi, this is Susan Michel in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. It is a rainy day in Western Massachusetts, but it's warm. It's 50 something, so it's all good. I took my morning run and enjoyed that very much. I just published my book on Easter. It is entitled Surrender to Joy from Suicide to Serenity. It is based on the principles of A Course in Miracles, which I have been studying now for 33 years. And I can honestly say that A Course in Miracles is my personal GPS to peace, love, joy, and happiness. When I embody the principles that I know are true, I feel good. However, life continues to throw me curveballs, triggers, so I vacillate from a place of peace, love, joy, and happiness to, I guess, feeling the feelings that need to be felt in order for me to work through those pain points. You know, we all come into this world, I believe, because we have something to learn. The world is a classroom. And as I say frequently, everything in life is a lesson or a blessing. The blessings are fun. The blessings are when we are connected to our blessings, we are plugged into our God socket, we are connected to source energy, we are able to be a conduit for miracles, as A Course in Miracles teaches us to do. So when we are connected to our joy, God is able to get through to us. And that is our natural state. When life triggers us, and we go into some of those uncomfortable feelings. A Course in Miracles tells us everything is either love or fear. So all those uncomfortable feelings go under the umbrella of fear, anger, sadness, all those uncomfortable feelings. However, I also believe we need to feel it in order to heal it. What we resist persists. The darkness has to come to the light. So it is very important, as I teach and I learn in my life, to own our pain, but only because we want to see that it has no power over us and we can get to the other side of it. So I'm going to start today's talk with the paragraph that I wrote in the introduction to my book, Surrender to Joy. It was downloaded to me from Source Energy about 7 years ago. And I start out in my book, I write, "My passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection with all that is real." This is my message. It can be clarified with 3 simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. So when we are able to connect with that higher guidance, we are able to be a miracle worker. We are able to extend God's love to the world. We are able to be a conduit. We are able to be a channel. We are able to connect with what we were born to do, just as Jesus did. You know, Jesus is the author of A Course in Miracles, and he's, you know, basically Helen Schuckman and William Thetford scribed his words, and he tells us in A Course in Miracles that we all have the potential to be like him. You know, he overcame the world, so we can do that also, because we're the same as Jesus. God has but one son, and we are all part of that sonship. So everything that Jesus did, we can do also and more. You know, it's so interesting because I grew up in a traditional Lutheran church, and how the church perceives Jesus is so different than how Course in Miracles explains his role in our healing. The church looks at Jesus as someone to be worshiped, someone to be exalted, like they put him at a status so much greater than us that it makes him seem unattainable. In A Course in Miracles, Jesus says that when people think of him, they think of him in two ways, either to be exalted or to be crucified. You know, they want to worship him or they want to shun him. He says, but that is not how he wants us to perceive him. He wants us to perceive him as our teacher, as our role model, and learn from what he accomplished when he was here on earth, when he was here in this earthly classroom, learning the lessons that we are all in the process of learning. So when I think of Jesus as I learned as a young girl growing up, he doesn't make that much sense to me. It doesn't really resonate with me. I remember, you know, going into the church, and in the front of the church, there would be a crucifix. And on that crucifix was Jesus Christ with nails through his hands, a nail through his feet. The head, he was very skinny. His head was down to the side, and there was just blood coming from his body. And this is who I was taught to worship. I need to worship this man who died for my sins. And it made me feel really guilty that my sins are responsible for someone else having to suffer so severely. I grew up with a lot of guilt. You know, part of it was from the church. The other part of it was the dysfunction that went on in my family. So I grew up with a lot of guilt. It wasn't until I found A Course in Miracles years later in my 20s that I realized that guilt is not of God. You know, guilt is of my ego, and my ego wants to keep me away from God. So what I practice as a Course in Miracles student is I practice connecting to my innocence. Through my studies of A Course in Miracles, I realize that when I'm feeling guilty, when I'm feeling like a sinner, you know, that's how a lot of the traditional churches term us, as sinners, when I'm connected to my guilt, when I'm feeling less than, when I'm condemning myself for my mistakes, when I'm judging myself, that is not of God. That is of my ego. And that is something that I need help in releasing. Because when I can connect with my innocence, then I can become the miracle worker that I was born to be. So we always have a choice at each and every moment. It is challenging, though, because the world is third dimensional. I'm recently learning what that means. We are run on the egoic thought system. There is a lot of dense energy down here, I believe. So we are constantly being challenged, but when we can surrender our will with a small w to his will with a capital W, we are able to access the flow and become the miracle worker that we were born to be. And there are daily disciplines that we can use to stay connected to that flow. For me, it's meditation, it's practicing Course in Miracles lessons, it's listening to either Course in Miracles or some kind of spiritual documentary on YouTube, on Audible. I mean, there are daily disciplines that we can use to connect to source energy. Sometimes I know when I'm feeling off, I force myself, I don't know if that's the right word, is I give to someone else. And when I give to another person, it helps me access the truth of who I am. Like if I'm riding in my car and there are certain areas in Western Massachusetts, Springfield, where I live right now, where there are people that stand on certain corners and they ask for money, and I do my best to just see their beauty and their Christ-like nature, because when I see the Christ-like nature in someone else, I can feel the Christ-like nature in myself. I do my best not to see anyone as inferior, not to see anyone as superior, because God has but one son. We're all part of the sonship. And so when we're looking down on someone or we're looking up to someone, we're not feeling Christ. We're not feeling who we truly are. When I can give, sometimes I'll just give $1 or $2 or $3 to someone that's asking for money. I feel like it helps me start to feel connection to other people, because when we give, we feel how much we have. It doesn't have to be money, it can be anything. But when we extend love to our brother in any way, we feel how much love that we have within us. So if I give $1 to someone who is asking for money, I can feel my energy start to shift. A Course in Miracles says we don't know. And again, it's not about money. Money is really in itself meaningless. It's about connecting to another person and extending God's love in whatever way we feel drawn to give. So today's lesson is lesson 293 in the workbook for students. And lesson 293 states, all fear is past and only love is here. I think each and every lesson is saying the same thing in different words. It's teaching us how to connect to source energy, which is unconditional love. So if we can really embody the essence of any one of the lessons that are in the workbook, we are going to be able to connect to who we truly are. And what Jesus writes here in lesson 293, he writes, all fear is past because its source is gone and all its thoughts gone with it. Love remains the only present state whose source is here forever and forever. Can the world seem bright and clear and safe and welcoming with all my past mistakes oppressing it and showing me distorted forms of fear? Yet in the present, love is obvious and its effects apparent. All the world shines in reflection of its holy light, and I perceive a world forgiven at last. So what this lesson is saying is that it's so important to release the past. It's so important to forgive ourselves and our brothers for any mistakes that we've made in the past. And it's so important to just kind of embrace our innocence exactly as it is, right here, right now. You know, I work right now part-time at a local nursing home, and it's an interesting experience. It's a temporary job, but it's something that I was drawn to. So I learn from my time there. And what happened this past week is there were ministers from a Catholic church that came in to do this practice called the Rosary. Now, I'm not that familiar with Catholicism. Growing up, my father was Catholic. However, he went to Catholic schools as a boy, and he became disillusioned. So his adult life was lived as an atheist / agnostic. He didn't practice Catholicism at all. So I don't know that much about their particular thought system. I sat through this service called the Rosary, and what they did is they did a series of chants, and they kept reciting the what's it called, the prayer, that prayer that everyone says. They kept reciting that holy prayer over and over, and they kind of kept asking God to forgive their sins. You know, the prayer, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." You know, I've recited that prayer, the Lord's Prayer, I guess it's called. And I know if you interpret it one way, it's to me, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you interpret it in another way, it makes a lot of sense. You know, a lot of prayers have to do with how you interpret them. But I sat through the Rosary service, and I tried, you know, not to judge. Everyone worships in their own way. But what I saw people, in a way, connecting with their guilt and then asking God to forgive them. And I don't think that God needs to forgive us, because I believe that God has never condemned us. The only people that condemn us are ourselves. You see, God is total and complete unconditional love. So he only sees the beauty in us. And when I can connect to my own innocence, he is able to get through, and I am able to hear his guidance. I am able to hear his wisdom. I am able to feel his love. So for me to see myself as a sinner, the way they did in this rosary ceremony, I don't believe that does me any good at all. And again, I don't believe I need God's forgiveness, because God has never condemned us, but we condemn ourselves. I need to, again, release that judgmental state of mind that I go into sometimes, and just work on connecting to my own innocence, remembering who I truly am. I have a chapter in my book that is really, really nice. And it's chapter 5. I entitle it Finding Joy Within. Now, when we go into guilt, when we go into judgment, when we go into resentment, we can't access that joy that is always available to us, and what I write here in chapter 5, I write, peace and joy are available to you right here and now, regardless of what is going on in your life. When you start living from the inside out instead of from the outside in, you learn to connect with your inner peace first, and then enter the world from a place of acceptance and love, which you can then share. When you do this, life makes sense. So when I, start my day off with a Course in Miracles lesson, when I start my day off with a meditation, it really helps me to start the day off with a solid foundation, because that peace and joy that I'm looking for are definitely something that is within me. And I do believe there is so much going on in the external world that is there to exemplify my guilt. So that's why it's so important for us to remember that everything that we're looking for is within us, and then go into the world. And ultimately, if we can really access that peace when we go into the world, since the world is our mirror and the external world is always reflecting back to us, what we believe on an internal level, then when we go into the world, it should be a much better experience. It should be an enjoyable experience. And when the triggers do come up, but our foundation is solid, they don't trigger us as much, right? What another thing that happened this week that was super cool, I had lunch with this woman that I've known for years. And the reason I was drawn to her is because she is very spiritual. She is very metaphysical. She's aware of A Course in Miracles, but she's not a Course in Miracles student the way I am. But we went out for lunch, and the first thing I found out, which is quite interesting, is that her birthday is on the same day as my mother. My mother died about 38 years ago. And her birthday is June 27th. I've never actually met anyone with the same exact birthday as my mother. And this woman that I had lunch with told me that she had the same exact birthday as my mom. So I thought that was maybe some kind of a sign, that there was something for me to learn from our conversation. She's very nice, very spiritual. And then she told me that she is in the process now of really studying astrology in depth. And I think that's really cool also, because I was studying astrology in depth prior to A Course in Miracles. The first astrology book that I studied, that I have brought up here time and time again, is Linda Goodman's Love Signs. And Linda Goodman's Love Signs has a lot of spiritual truth in the preface. Anyway, so we start talking about astrology. We start talking about life, and then then we started talking about the subject of reincarnation, and the way she interprets, our life based on her study of astrology is that we all have many lifetimes that we have experienced, and the challenges that we have not overcome in past lives kind of create our journey in this life. But the lesson is learning how to love ourselves unconditionally. Now, that kind of makes sense to me because I've always strongly believed in reincarnation. And I know that my way out of hell is love, is learning to love myself and others completely and totally and unconditionally. So it kind of makes sense that past lifetimes set me up for the learning that I need to embark upon in this lifetime. And then I went to A Course in Miracles, and I know I've read this before. And A Course in Miracles has a section in the Manual for Teachers. It's the 24th question in the Manual for Teachers. And it says here in A Course in Miracles, is reincarnation so? So I'm just going to read the first part of this, because you see, the thing is, even though on one level, I do believe in reincarnation, on the other level, since there is no time, and the only time that's important is the present moment, whether reincarnation exists or it doesn't really matter that much. And I understand that. So it says here in A Course in Miracles, in the ultimate sense, reincarnation is impossible. There is no past or future, and the idea of birth into a body has no meaning, either once or many times. Reincarnation cannot then be true in any real sense. Our only question should be, is the concept helpful? And I think for me, it is helpful. It is helpful because to, I guess, know that my time here on earth is valuable, it is useful, and I'm in the process of overcoming lessons that I might not have learned sufficiently in past lifetimes. I guess it's useful for me. It seems to make sense to me. But I thought when I was out to lunch with this new friend of mine who had my mother's birthday, I thought her understanding and interpretation of reincarnation and past lives was so helpful. And as A Course in Miracles students, we all know that the 3 fastest ways to heaven, which is a state of mind when we're connected to source energy, peace, love, joy, and happiness, are acceptance, accepting everything exactly as it is right here, right now. I mean, there is no past, there is no future. The only time that's important is the present. That's when we can really feel God's presence. Acceptance, gratitude, being grateful for everything that we have and everything that is really important we have within us, and forgiveness, acceptance, gratitude, and forgiveness. And the only person that we really need to forgive is ourselves. When we forgive our brother, we're forgiving ourselves. When we forgive ourselves, we see the innocence in our brother, because God has one son and we are all part of that same sonship. So on that note, it is just about 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, and I will end with the introduction of a Course in Miracles. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And what that means is the only thing that's real is the love. Thank you all for being here with me today. And I will now return the microphone to Lynn. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Susan Michel. I do appreciate you, and I love your sharing.